maybe? I don't know. My memory sucks. So sorry. We're conflicted. We're fighting. Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books and to recommend some friggin' books. I'm doing another recommendation by like subgenre type of thing like I did before. I don't know, last month, maybe? I don't know. My memory sucks. So sorry. So doing 6 more books, most of which are favorites. Yeah, most of which are favorites. A couple that aren't like favorites, but really enjoyed, and starts of series that I can't wait to continue. That kind of vibe. And I'm gonna do the same categories, the same subgenres, to just kind of show you, in my opinion, and why I think each book might have each thing, or which books might have each subgenre, so that if you like that subgenre, you can make a determination of if you think you like this book or not, these books or not. And the books in question, The Hunters by David Ragg, which I read pretty recently, and that's one that isn't necessarily like a favorite, but I really, really liked it, and I'm like very, very intrigued to continue on with the series. This one is adult fantasy, set in like kind of a deserty, westerny kind of landscape and world. Son of the Storm by Suyi Davies Okungbawa, which is definitely a fave, at least from memory. I do want to reread this. I have the audiobook, and I think I'm going to do that because the second book is finally coming out, Warrior of the Wind, and it's coming out next month, I want to say. I pre-ordered it. I don't remember. And this one is adult fantasy set in an African-inspired world, and yeah, I just really, really liked it. The Judas Blossom by Stephen Arion, and this is a historical fantasy in a Persian-inspired world. It's like Persian history, a little bit reimagined, but a lot of it is actual historical facts and events and things. Monstrous, which is a graphic novel series, but it is fantasy, adult fantasy. Illustrations by Sana Takeda, written by Marjorie M. Liu. A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a novella. One of Dracula's brides writing a letter explaining why she murdered him. And then Kushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey. Epic fantasy, for sure. Adult fantasy. First category up is political. So, Son of the Storm, I think people could like if they like political stuff, because there is a lot of, currently at least in the first book, it's not very expanded into these other kingdoms or regions. We hear about them and we know some stuff that's going on and some conflicts and things for sure. But in the first book, there's just a lot of scheming within the place we're in, the country we're in, and the city specifically. Lots of scheming for power, that kind of stuff. You know, court politics kind of thing. So, I think if you like political, definitely you would enjoy that element of that. Judas Blossom, definitely political, very much a lot of that going on. We're following direct descendant of Genghis Khan, still conquering the Mongol Empire. We're following one of them, and then a couple other characters, and there's very much the political element. They're conquering, you know, some colonization and imperialism is happening. Monstrous, I would say, isn't like as... It kind of is, though, because, again, we have a bunch of different... In this world, it's kind of different races of creatures that do kind of have their different kingdoms or territories that they run, and we're conflicted. We're fighting, and there's definitely groups that are trying to just take over other ones and take power and scheme and manipulate and make plans for all of this in a political sense. Kushiel's Dart, very, very political, in my opinion. Like, very, very much so. Especially as the series continues, but even in the first book, in Kushiel's Dart, there is a fair amount of that. Like, the main character, who she is essentially raised by and mentored by, this person is very involved in court politics. Very involved. Like, scheming, spying, sabotage, all of these things in the name of protecting the crown, protecting the royal family. And then our main character is very much involved in all of this as well as it goes on. There's all kinds of court politics happening, 1000%. Next category is adventure. And The Hunters, that's why I was like, I don't want to say too much, because to me, The Hunters is very much adventure fantasy. I don't know how it's going to continue on in the series, but this first book for sure, it's pretty quick as far as the timeline. It's like a couple of days of events unfolding, and it's largely like we're in this settlement, this village, this town, and some shit pops off, and we gotta bounce. And our two main characters have dipped, and they're running away, and people are chasing them, and it's kind of this chase through this deserty landscape. Like the South, it makes me think of like Arizona, like the Southwest United States is what it seemed like to me. Cliffs, rocks, dry, deserty land. At least that's what I was imagining in my head. And yeah, we're just literally running almost the whole time with our horses and our buggy and like trying to get away from them and then fighting as we're running and things. And so very, very much adventure feel to me. Son of the Storm I put under here. Again, I haven't read it in a hot second, but I do remember the main character, or one of the main characters at least, it's more like partway through the book, towards the end of the book, I would say, that we go off on like a little quest, basically. We go off on a quest, things ensue, etc. So there's an adventure element. I don't think I would ever categorize this as adventure fantasy, at least not from this first book anyway, but there are adventure elements, more so in this than in some of the other ones, because I think most books probably have some element of that, but enough where I would put it under that subcategory. Again, you could kind of make that argument for Monstrous or Kushiel's Dart also. More so Kushiel's Dart. I probably could categorize that one as well as adventure, because there is it's in that first book, right? It's been a hot second since I read it. Is it the first book or the second book? Now I'm forgetting. Oh no, I think it is in the first book. So yeah, maybe I'll change it and actually say yes to Kushiel's Dart as well. Because yeah, there's a pretty strong, like, moving from here to there, and like chaos ensues, and like fighting our way through, and the landscape causing problems, and how are we going to survive? All that kind of stuff. Next up, we have military subgenre, subcategory. Son of the Storm, I would say yes, because we do have this, element of these other kingdoms that we are at war with or going to war with, etc. Planning for that. The government trying to figure out what we're going to do here. The Judas Blossom, 1000%, I would say, military fantasy. I would say that's probably like the strongest subgenre I would categorize it as, because again, it's historical. There's an element of historical fiction involved where we're taking very real historical events and just fictionalizing elements of them, but then added element of some fantasy stuff. And yeah, just all the military strategizing, right? That is all going on for sure. Again, we're following one of the conquerors themselves, and we are seeing like in the room while they're strategizing with the generals and the whoever, and what are we going to do and how are we going to attack, and like battle scenes. There are war battle scenes happening. And then Monstrous, similar thing. We do see a bit of the military strategizing, and we have seen a couple of battles for sure. We see a little bit less of the military strategizing in Monstrous, but we do see a little bit, but it's more so we're seeing like battles happening. And then the other ones, not so much. Kushiel's Dart, that series as it goes on, yes, but not so much in the first book. And then Dark. This isn't necessarily an actual subgenre, really, but books that are a little bit darker, that don't have a lot of levity to them, because most adult fantasy books are gonna have some darker moments, but then some lighter moments, and maybe some characters that are really funny and lighthearted and jokey and stuff, or pranksters, but then like, ooh, dark serious moments. So what I mean is books that are just kind of overall a little dark. and serious, right? Like pretty damn serious. This isn't like grimdark. I'm not talking about grimdark necessarily. I don't know. You could argue that for one of these maybe. Monstrous, very dark. It's a very fucked up world. I mean, we have our main character being possessed by like demon god thing. We don't know. That is violent, like violent. And it's a graphic novel, so there are, you know, visuals on the page that get a little hinky sometimes with if you're squeamish, you know, you might be like, oh god. And yeah, it's a pretty somber, serious vibe overall. We do have little cute ass Kippa, who's a little fox child, like fox human child that is so adorable and such a little beacon of hope and like, we can do it. Just so cute. But that's like really the only light spot in the series, I would say, is Kippa. Yeah. Master Ren is a little like kind of, there's a little levity with him sometimes too, the cat character that is with our main character, but yeah, it's pretty serious. And then Dowry of Blood. Probably don't need much explanation for this from the description of the book. It is, again, one of Dracula's brides explaining why she murdered him. And it is dark in the sense that, I mean, it's like vampires and there's some scenes of just, you know, ripping out people's throats or whatever, killing. And it's very much serious because it is exploring themes of abuse. Emotional and mental abuse, physical abuse too, but definitely the, like, mind fuck of emotional and mental abuse. Like, there were moments where, there were, like, just brief moments where, as someone who's been through that, it was a little bit like, oh god, that's hitting, like, a little too hard right now, but it was also, what's the word I'm trying to say? A lot of it really resonated with me, though, in, like, a cathartic. That's the word I was trying to think of. A lot of it was cathartic at the same time, but very much somber serious. And then Kushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey. Same thing, pretty serious tone overall, pretty somber tone overall. There's definitely some dark stuff. The main character is raised in this kingdom, in this world. Their culture reveres sex as like this holy thing, and there are people who are trained from a young age to be like basically holy servants to this god of sex and love. So they're, you know, prostitutes essentially, but they are treated slightly differently, and they're like, the concept of rape, of forcing this, is just like unspeakable in their culture, like completely it's like sacrilegious, right? So there's very much the element of consent going on, and they are pretty well respected. The main character, though, has a very specific ability or a very specific thing about her where, like, pleasure and pain are the same thing. So she gets purchased, essentially, or employed for people who want to do some rough stuff occasionally. And we don't often get, like, super, super, super into the nitty-gritties, but there are some scenes that are a little graphic and a little, like, torture-y, you know? Sexual kind of torture, like BDSM extreme occasionally. Sometimes it's just kind of standard BDSM stuff, but sometimes it gets a little like, oh god, where she needs like intense medical care afterwards. So be forewarned. But yeah, as you can imagine, it's a little dark. And then romance. So almost none of these have much of romance going on. The Hunters, 0%, at least in this first book. Like, there's not even a hint of it. Was there? No, there's not even like a hint of it. Son of the Storm, I will say, toward the end, there was something blossoming, which I loved. I honestly think that is part of what made me love the book so much, is the lines of dialogue and just the writing in these scenes between these two characters. And I don't even think there was a sex scene or anything. It was just like them getting to know each other and developing this bond and developing this connection and like realizing they have this connection. And there were just some lines that I was like, oh, it's so cute. It's so sweet. Oh my God, it's so romantic. So That one could end up having a stronger romance as the series goes on. I don't know. Same thing, Judas Blossom. I'm sure there's going to be some romances developing, but there wasn't any romance happening in the first book. Monstrous, no, there's no romance whatsoever. There's like a past romance that our main character is like still wounded by, which maybe could come back around, but thus far, the 7 volumes I've read, there's no like current active romance. Dowry of Blood, there's obviously a romance. This is not a romance novel because it's not happy. There's not a happily ever after. She murders the dude. But obviously there is element like of romance and what can go on in a romantic relationship, to the negative here. And Kushiel's Dart, very much romance. It's very political and everything, and like I said, very dark, but there is romance in it as well. It's very slow burn, I would say. And very complicated, a very complicated romance. Very, very complicated. And there we have it. Another 6 books for you to potentially check out if you haven't yet, based on if you think you like these subgenres and these combinations of subgenres here, or categories of books that I have quite enjoyed. Unfortunately, with Kushiel's Dart, I didn't end up loving the trilogy overall, but I really liked the first book. I quite liked the second book, and then I DNF'd the third book at like 70% or something. Oh, God. But I could see a lot of people really, really rocking with it till the end. If you've read any of these, let me know if you enjoyed them. Let me know if you think I was on point with these categorizations or not. Like and subscribe if you feel so inclined and you haven't already. If you don't have an actual comment to add, you can just leave an emoji to say hey if you want to let me know you were watching. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.